The film begins in a collapsing America, where we meet Lee, a hardened war photographer, on her way to a massive protest, one of the many that have erupted as the country buckles under the weight of economic collapse and civil unrest. In the SUV, is her longtime colleague, Joel. The air is thick with smoke and tension, the city buzzing with the simmering anger of its citizens. They arrive at a sprawling intersection where a line of exhausted people stretches for blocks, desperate for essentials like water and food. The National Guard stands watch, rifles slung over their shoulders, their faces blank beneath their helmets. Joel grips his camera, adjusting the focus as Lee steps into the throng, her camera raised like a shield. The crowd surges as a water truck rumbles into view, its metal sides dented and rust-streaked. People push forward, hands reaching, voices rising in a chaotic crescendo. Amid the frenzy, a young photographer is shoved to the ground by a policeman. Lee darts forward, grabbing the girl by the arm and pulling her away from the chaos. Suddenly, a young woman breaks free from the crowd and sprints toward the water truck. Her final, desperate act exploding into a shockwave of heat and metal. Bodies are flung like rag dolls, smoke and dust enveloping the street as the crowd scatters in blind terror. Lee doesn't flinch. Her camera clicks relentlessly, capturing the aftermath, the twisted bodies, the blood-splattered pavement, the stunned faces of those still standing. Each frame a testament to the unraveling of a nation. Later that night, the group regroups at a dimly lit hotel lounge. Lee, Joel, and their mentor, Sammy, a grizzled veteran of countless war zones, slump into their seats, the weight of the day pressing down on them. Sammy's thick, calloused fingers tap at his glass, his eyes lost in the amber swirl of his drink as Joel rants about the senselessness of it all. Lee, still shaken but resolved, cuts through Joel's words. She tells Sammy that they're planning to drive to Washington, hoping to secure an interview with the president himself, the man many blame for pushing the country to the brink of collapse. Sammy, his skepticism palpable, raises a graying brow, warning them of the dangers ahead. He knows better than most that in a country this broken, even the truth can be a deadly pursuit. As Lee heads to her room, she nearly bumps into the young photographer she saved earlier. The girl, barely in her 20s, clutches her camera with shaking hands. She introduces herself as Jessie, her voice trembling but eyes bright with admiration as she pleads for a chance to join them. She's idolized Lee for years, she says, and dreams of capturing the truth the way Lee does. Lee, seeing a flicker of her younger self in the girl, hesitates. She knows the road ahead is a dangerous one, but perhaps that same recklessness, that same hunger for the truth, is exactly what they need. She agrees, and Jessie's face lights up, her gratitude clear even in the shadowed hallway. The next morning, the group loads into the SUV, the engine groaning as they pull onto the deserted freeway. Abandoned cars litter the roadside, their doors flung open like gaping mouths, as if the occupants fled in a blind panic. Sammy leans forward, grumbling into Joel's ear to ask the president if dismantling the FBI was really the brilliant move it seemed at the time, considering the anarchy now consuming the nation. Joel promises to press hard, his jaw tightening as he imagines the confrontation. The journey grows more tense as they approach a gas station. As they pull up, they're met by a group of heavily armed men. Joel, keeping his voice steady, asks if they can fill up the tank. The lead man shakes his head, demanding payment in Canadian dollars, the only currency that still holds value in this fractured land. Lee agrees to the payment. As they pull back onto the highway, the reality of their situation sinks in. The road to Washington is long and treacherous, filled with people who have lost their humanity to the chaos consuming the country. As the SUV rumbles down the cracked highway, the group approaches the skeletal remains of a collapsed mall, its shattered glass facade reflecting the muted gray of the overcast sky. A helicopter, twisted and burned, lies sprawled across the crumbling parking lot. She turns to Jessie and tells her to grab her camera. Jessie hesitates for a moment, then steps out into the eerie silence. As they approach the wreck, Lee instructs Jessie to capture the scene, to immortalize this moment of chaos and destruction. Jessie raises her camera, her hand steady despite the cold bite of the wind, the shutter clicking in rapid succession as she moves around the wreckage, capturing the jagged metal, the splintered rotor blades, the scattered dog tags glinting in the weak daylight. Lee steps back, her sharp eyes flicking over the scene, taking in every detail. She turns to Jessie, her tone firm but not unkind, reminding her of the dangers that come with their line of work. She warns her to stay vigilant, to always watch her surroundings, because the world they're documenting has become a place where a single misstep can mean death. The next day, the group finds themselves in the heart of a brutal skirmish between the Western Forces and the Florida Alliance, the air alive with the crackle of gunfire and the sharp, metallic clang of bullets ricocheting off rusted metal and crumbling concrete. They hunker down by a corner, as they capture the chaos unfolding around them. As the fighting momentarily dies down, they seize the chance to slip into a nearby building, their footsteps muffled against the thick layer of dust coating the floor. They move in tight formation, a leader whispering directions as they creep through the darkened corridors, their breath coming in short, sharp gasps. They come upon an injured soldier. Without hesitation, one of the Western Forces soldiers steps forward, his gun cracking once, twice, the sound echoing through the empty hallways as the young soldier's body slumps to the floor. Later, the Western Forces take a group of captured Florida Alliance soldiers out into the open. The prisoners' hands are bound, their heads bowed as they're lined up. Jessie forces herself to raise her camera, her breath catching in her throat as she captures each desperate, terrified face, each final, fleeting moment before the bodies hit the ground. The following morning, they're back onto the road and into the SUV, the road to Washington still stretching out before them, a jagged scar across the heart of a dying nation. They drive through a small, seemingly untouched town, its white picket fences and neatly trimmed lawns a jarring contrast to the devastation they've witnessed. As they roll through the silent streets, their breath catches in their throats, the surreal calm of the place unsettling after the months of chaos. They pass through the town, as they're now 176 miles to Washington. Later, the SUV rumbles over the cracked asphalt as they reach the edge of an open field that stretches into the distance, but something feels distinctly off. As they inch forward, Lee squints through her camera lens, adjusting the focus until she spots a dark shape lying motionless in the middle of the road ahead. Lee whispers to the others, confirming what they all feared. Before they can react, a sudden crack echoes through the air, a single bullet tearing through their windshield. Joel yanks the wheel to the right, swerving behind an abandoned truck as the SUV skids to a stop, the engine still growling as they duck down, hearts pounding. They spot two military soldiers laying down, one of them frantically adjusting a telescope, his eyes scanning the windows of a huge house across the field. Lee drops to the grass, pressing her body flat against the cool earth. Suddenly, the soldier beside them steadies his aim, his finger tightening around the trigger, and fires a single, deafening shot. There's a tense moment of silence, the world holding its breath, before he shouts to the group that the sniper is down and it's safe to move. They scramble back to their SUV and speed back onto the road, the cracked asphalt blurring beneath their tires as they try to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the makeshift battlefield. Unbeknownst to them, another vehicle has taken up position behind them. As the trailing car edges closer, it suddenly swerves alongside them, pulling up next to their SUV. Joel tenses, but then he catches a glimpse of the grinning face behind the wheel. It's Tony, his friend from the old days, his eyes wild with adrenaline as he leans out the window, flashing a wide, mischievous grin. He signals for them to roll down the window, then, in a wild, reckless move, clambers out of his passenger seat and jumps through the open back window of their SUV, tumbling into the back seat with a breathless laugh. Jessie, caught up in the sudden burst of energy, leans out the window, without thinking, leaps into the other car. Tony's driver shouts over the wind, promising to meet them in Washington as he floors the gas pedal. Minutes later, they find Tony's car abandoned on the side of a quiet, tree-lined street, the doors hanging open. Joel eases the SUV up the driveway of a weathered, two-story house. As they inch closer, they catch sight of Tony's friend and Jessie being forced to their knees at an open field, a group of armed soldiers towering over them. The soldiers then drop a pile of lifeless bodies over their dug-up grave. Lee, Tony, and Joel exchange a terrified glance, their breath coming in short, sharp bursts as they whisper a frantic plan. They walk towards them, their hands raised, and approach the soldiers slowly, their voices trembling as they plead for their friends' lives. Joel steps forward, his voice shaking as he insists that they're just photographers, that they mean no harm, but the soldiers remain unmoved, their faces cold and impassive. One of the soldiers, his eyes narrowing as he studies Tony, suddenly sneers and raises his rifle. He mutters something under his breath about foreigners and pulls the trigger, the sharp crack of the gunshot splitting the air as Tony's friend crumples to the ground. Joel, his face draining of color, stammers that they're Americans, that they're on the same side, but the soldier merely shrugs, his eyes cold as he looks Tony up and down. Without warning, the soldier fires again, the sound echoing through the empty streets as Tony's body hits the ground, and Sammy drives through the soldiers and shouts for them to get in, his voice hoarse with panic, and the trio scrambles into the back seat as bullets slam into the side of the truck, shattering windows and ripping through the thin metal frame. As they speed away, the world blurs into a chaotic rush of gunfire and screeching tires. Jessie suddenly vomits as she's in disbelief over what happened. Lee's eyes widen as she notices the spreading stain of blood on Sammy's side. They stop the car and carry him to the back seat. Joel steps onto the gas as he hopes to find help. As the first rays of dawn break through the smoke, they finally approach the Western Forces military base, Unfortunately, Sammy has lost a lot of blood and has now passed away. For a moment, the world seems to still, the chaotic noise around them fading into a distant hum as Joel's mind struggles to process the loss. A few fellow journalists approach. One of them offers his condolences, understanding the bond they shared with Sammy. As the soldiers begin to prepare for their final push toward Washington, the grim news reaches them. The journalist informs the group that the government has surrendered, its defenses collapsing under the weight of the relentless onslaught from the Florida Alliance and other rebel factions. The news hits Joel like a punch to the gut, all the blood, all the loss, and now the president's grip on power has shattered, making Sammy's death feel even more pointless. As the sun climbs higher, the base comes alive with frantic activity, soldiers loading up their weapons, tanks rumbling to life, and helicopters spinning up their blades, ready to join the final assault on Washington. Joel, Lee, and Jesse are swept up in the chaos. Hours later, as they approach Washington, the full scale of the devastation comes into view. The skyline is a battlefield, thick smoke rising from crumbling buildings, the sound of gunfire and explosions echoing through the city's twisted streets. As they push closer to the heart of the city, Jessie clutches her camera, snapping frantic, heart-wrenching images of the final battle for America's soul. Suddenly, through the smoke and chaos, they spot a black SUV speeding away from the White House. Lee's heart races as she realizes it must be the president, making a last, desperate attempt to flee the crumbling empire he helped destroy. The Western Forces soldiers open fire, their bullets ripping through the vehicle's armor. The soldiers rush forward, but as they throw open the doors, they find nothing but other people working at the White House. The president isn't inside. Lee, her breath coming in short, pulls her toward the White House steps, shouting for Joel to cover them. They rush through the shattered doors, pushing past the smoking remains of broken furniture and abandoned barricades, their footsteps echoing down the marble halls of power. As they enter the main hallway, the soldiers with them cut down the last of the president's security, their bodies crumpling to the ground in a hail of gunfire. Jessie steps forward, her camera raised, her fingers shaking as she captures the final moments of the regime. She doesn't see the lone security guard step out from a side room, his gun raised and aimed directly at her back. Without thinking, Lee throws herself between the gunman and Jessie, her body jerking as the bullets slam into her back, and collapses onto the marble floor. Jessie stumbles back, her breath catching in her throat as Lee's lifeless eyes stare up at the cracked, bullet-riddled ceiling, the echo of the gunshot still ringing in her ears. The soldiers drag the president from his hiding place moments later, his face twisted in terror. Without hesitation, they open fire, their bullets tearing through his body, the echoes of their gunfire mixing with Jessie's silent, tear-filled screams as the once great leader of America falls to the cold, blood-soaked floor of his ruined empire. Please make sure to like, comment and subscribe for more notifications. Until next time. See you soon.